Okay, Oscar fans, if you want the best predictions, you ought to steal from this guy, Daniel Montgomery, our senior editor at Gold Derby, who didn't you recently, Daniel, have 23 out of 24 right for the Oscars?
I that 2 or 3 years ago was the Birdman year.
Oh, right.
That was my claim to fame. Last year, not as good, but we'll keep up with the Birdman year, and that's the year I'll keep as my official record.
You're smart of you as a pundit. That's what you got to tout. Absolutely. Well, this year, let's start with Best Picture. You're a complete wimp. You've got Dunkirk like everybody else. And I mean, wimp, I mean, not that it can't happen, of course, it can. But I'm saying that we're here as pundits, sometimes tasked to jump off cliffs. And there's nothing more than that I like to do, as everybody knows. So I just did something very impetuous yesterday. I declared that 3 Billboards will win Best Picture, and I planted my flag in it. We've got to say this is the day of the Gotham Awards. We don't know what's going to win tonight. Tomorrow, National Board of Review. The whole train leaves the station starting now. Do you think my bold prediction could happen?
I think it's possible. I think certainly there's a possibility that one of these kind of smaller indie darlings could pull up and win, like Spotlight surprising a couple of years ago, and Moonlight surprising just this past year. I think the problem with 3 Billboards is that I think it's going to be divisive. So it's going to have some of those 1 and 2 votes, but it might also have some of those 6, 7, or 8 votes, or depending on how many Best Picture nominees there are. Which is
true of others. Like the complaint about Dunkirk is, oh, it's so boring. It's just so obvious, big war picture.
It could have that problem too. I think if there is going to be a consensus surprise in the Spotlight and Moonlight vein, I think it's actually likelier to be Lady Bird.
Okay, I see the wisdom of that. Explain your point of view here.
Well, Lady Bird, first of all, us editors at Gold Derby, we agree on nothing unanimously, and we all unanimously agree that we really all liked a Lady Bird. I'm not sure if it's all of our number ones, but it would be some of our 2s and 3s, and that's the key to winning.
It has a perfect score on Tomatoes. Perfect score.
Perfect score, and it just broke the Toy Story 3 record for the longest running perfect score with the most reviews. It's gone the longest with reviews without a negative one yet. So that certainly speaks highly of a consensus choice. It's a lovable, huggable movie. It's the kind of movie that we could see the last couple of years. That's not necessarily a flashy directorial achievement. So we could see a split there with Lady Bird winning picture and a Dunkirk or a Shape of Water winning director, for instance. But the fact that it is directed by a woman is certainly helpful in the post Harvey Weinstein era of Hollywood. In the same way that the Oscars So White backlash certainly helped give Moonlight a bit of a bump from voters who were feeling like the Academy was starting to look not necessarily great for some of its demographic choices, shall we say. So I think Lady Bird is best positioned to and much less divisive, I would think, than 3 Billboards.
Well, here's my thought on 3 Billboards and why I'm sticking my thin, trembling neck out for it. And that is, I'm here on the ground in Hollywood. You're out in New York. And what I keep hearing is that it's like everyone's discovery movie. They're like, oh, like the guy down the hall here where I live in Century City came running down the other day. Oh, have you seen, I don't know if you've seen Lady Bird yet or not. But I know that it's a darling of the HFPA. From my limited snooping around the globe voters, I'm hearing that it's my guess likely to win Best Picture there, the Best Drama. Moonlight won last year. It's certainly going to be nominated for SAG Ensemble. It's going to be, it has the TV actors and the film actors in it. That's what they always like. And it's going to win a lot of critics awards. And I think that there's something, the reason I agree totally with Lady Bird, it could absolutely be the backup, that consensus choice, that number 2 or 3 if it's not your number 1. Absolutely. And that's what we're looking for. We have to explain to people watching this that in the last few years, these upsets that we keep seeing year after year for Best Picture, when all the experts are going for Revenant and Spotlight wins, and all the experts are going for La La Land last year and Moonlight wins. Some in place in recent years where it's a preferential ballot. Films and contenders are ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and Revenant is a divisive film. It's either number one or lower. And these movies like Moonlight that everybody likes or loves are winning. So that said, I think Billboards is, let me put it to you this way. The year of Spotlight and the year of Moonlight, when I would go to industry events with our co-editors, Chris and Marcus here in LA, we should have known better, because people were telling, I mean, the movie that people are lobbying for, that they're whispering to, Spotlight or Moonlight, it's Billboards this year. That's what I'm hearing now. But on the other hand, we don't necessarily have to believe that, because a month ago that movie was Florida Project, and it was the movie people were actively campaigning for, just advocating for, in your face about it. And now it's 3 Billboards, which could pass as quickly as Florida Project, which could rebound. Glenn Whipp of the LA Times says Florida Project will win Best Picture. But that's what we're looking for, aren't we? That movie that's got the most passion, because the rooting factor is how you win.
Yeah, the rooting factor and the and it needs to be passionate enough to get those number 1 votes that it's going to need to just even be in the conversation, and it needs to turn off a few enough people to get those 2s and 3s, and Moonlight and Spotlight had that perfect balance, and you know, if it had been a plurality vote like the rest of the categories, you'd pick one winner, and you know, we would have seen La La Land win, just like it won 6 other awards down the ballot. We would have seen probably The Revenant win after it won Best Actor and Best Director. So that preferential ballot, I think, has been a game changer for Best Picture in an interesting way that we're still kind of trying to get ahead of that curve.
The other movie we hear a lot about in terms of people advocating for, that are really pushing, that there's the passion behind, is Call Me By Your Name. People really just love the movie in the way that Moonlight was a film they love. And that's, again, that fits the Lady Bird formula, doesn't it? Of just people having this extraordinary worship for it. At the same time, there is almost critical consensus behind it.
Yeah, it has that emotional rooting factor. It's kind of another little movie that could, Sundance independent film. It has a literary background. It's got kind of that snob appeal with that lush Italian setting, and a foreign director who sometimes they'll rally behind, Luca Guadagnino, like Michael Haneke and Pedro Almodovar, who've gotten into this best director race from time to time. It'll be interesting to see how that can. I think it did extraordinarily well in very limited release over the weekend, so it's already off to a good start there. I think it does tick a lot of the boxes. I'm not sure if Moonlight hadn't won last year. I'd say it might have a better shot. It might feel like going back to the same well in terms of it's a gay coming of age story. Romance in a not a similar way. I don't think they're very alike at all, but in terms of just the superficial subject matter, they look kind of similar. So they might balk at going there again to win. But I think it could pick up a bunch of nominations.
As of effective today, we pundits are permitted by 20th Century Fox or 21st Century Fox to talk about The Post, and I had that as my front runner to win Best Picture until I just had my 3 Billboards meltdown yesterday, or 2 days ago. And The Post strikes me as a real potential winner too, because it ticks off all the boxes. If the voters go back to the traditional Oscar movie, the movie that feels important, certainly Moonlight felt important, and Spotlight felt important. And what the reason Spotlight won in many regards is because it had this political message. It was a newspaper taking on the establishment. And here we've got the Washington Post taking on the conservative White House. And what I really, I just loved the movie. I didn't just like it; I loved the movie. And I'm of that Oscar age demographic, without saying any more than that. And I was, alive, lived through that era, and I think it does an exemplary job of showing us this drama from the perspective of Kay Graham instead of Daniel Ellsberg, which you would expect if it was traditional storytelling. And boy, these are my people up there. If I'm an Academy member, there's Tom Hanks and there's Meryl Streep, and it's like, wow. And she is so compelling. Streep is, and it feels so important. And it's such a wraparound, good, perfect little comeback for Steven Spielberg. There's something there, isn't there?
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting to see. As the embargo is lifted on opinions on the film, and soon the embargo will be lifted on actual reviews. So we'll see what kind of momentum this thing starts to build up. I think its hardest hurdle is the expectations that it thinks Spielberg and Hanks and Streep bring, the collective expectations they bring to it.
The fact that it's not like they disappoint.
Yeah, I think it's solid. I don't think it's necessarily. It's a rousing movie.
You don't really know all this stuff.
It's a rousing movie, but it's also a very straightforward film, kind of a minimal film. It's less than 2 hours, so it doesn't have that kind of epic, feel that you would, that get from your 2.5 hour, kind of typical Oscar movies. I think it's certainly in the mix. Potentially to win, but I'm still a little bit wait and see, even after having seen the film, on how the collective reaction is going to start to build this up. Whether it's going to be another Schindler's List, or if it's going to be another Bridge of Spies, maybe Best Picture and an acting nomination or two and a win maybe, but not necessarily towards the front of the pack. So I'm not exactly sure where it's going to land yet, but I think it does have a definite potential.
I was at the premiere of Shape of Water at the Toronto Film Festival and witnessed this same euphoric audience reaction that is rare when you have one of the giant theaters booked there and you unveil this movie that has high expectations. And boy, the audience was rapturous. And it reminded me of the unveiling of La La Land and Slumdog Millionaire and Capote, where people just ran out of the theater going, "Oh my God, oh my God!" And Shape of Water was assumed to be the front runner to win the audience award, which often means you're going to win Best Picture at the Oscars, or certainly another top award like Room did when it won Best Picture in Toronto, and then won Best Actress here. But it disappointed. Three Billboards won the audience award. These are the kind of tea leaves we as pundits are looking for. And there was a lot, and Shape of Water didn't even come in the top 3. On one hand, I think that's further evidence for the Three Billboards extraordinary love, the kind of people advocating it passionately like they do for them. But it just keeps falling up a little short. It didn't do well with the Indie Spirits, but yet it is such a magnificent film from a director who could certainly win Best Director, and that ups its odds for Best Picture. Where do you stand on the Shape of Water thing? Is it in trouble now, or are these little disappointments we've seen do they not matter because things will change tomorrow?
I mean, things could change tomorrow. There are a couple of examples that might cite one or the other possibility. Like on the one hand, it could be Jackie, where early stumbles indicate just catastrophic stumble down the line, and I think this might be even a closer comparison, it could be Birdman, where all that season it looks like boyhood, and then once the industry organization started having their say, it was Birdman all the way to Best Picture at the end. And this is also a Mexican director who has kind of an Oscar IOU.
Oh, I like that insight.
He was nominated for, Guillermo del Toro was nominated for writing Pan's Labyrinth, which lost a foreign language film, even though it was one of the most acclaimed films of the 21st century. It's this kind of quintessential American story, of the Cold War, and it's a love story, and it's kind of inspired by musicals, and so it does have kind of that feel of the artist too, and those kinds of just unabashedly romantic kind of films. And I would think that the love story between a woman and a fish would be a little bit too weird for the Oscar voters, but
Birdman
kind of blows that
break.
out of the water. Birdman was completely bonkers weird, and it won Best Picture. Which I mean that as a compliment. I love Birdman. And I mean that as kind of a compliment for A Shape of Water too. It's a really unusual film, which actually the fact that it has that unusual element could get the passion, and the fact that it has at its heart a kind of an old-fashioned love story could bring that consensus along. Where I don't think anyone is going to really rank that too low on a preferential ballot.
Oh, it's a masterpiece. It's so thrilling to watch. We jumped over Dunkirk because I was giving you grief about it at first. It certainly is the overwhelming favorite among our experts at this point to win Best Picture. Give me your best Dunkirk argument for it winning.
Well, it's interesting. It ticks a lot of the traditional Oscar boxes. It's the World War II movie. It's the war film. It's the epic film that's going to get a lot of love below the line. And it's got a director with a huge Oscar IOU, Christopher Nolan, who I think could win Best Director even if the film starts.
I agree.
Picture race. It can be potentially divisive, but I think what's interesting is that while it does have that kind of traditional flavor in terms of, World War II story, yeah, we've seen that before, it's an entirely new approach to it. It's a very Christopher Nolan movie, and that kind of almost experimental quality in a certain way. I think it will make it stand out with in the new Academy voting in a way that it might not have before. So I think it's kind of an old story that feels new, which could be exciting. I think it's going to do really well among, as you have coined, the steak eaters.
I didn't coin that. Harvey Weinstein did.
oh, in which case we should probably stop using it.
Yes.
So retiring that phrase officially.
In case people are curious about this, it's now a very, very frequently used term among the Oscarologists, and it was in the old. It's a throwback to the old days when Harvey would you'd run into him, let's say, in a corner at a party, and he's there may be 3 or 4 of us Oscar pundits there, and he's lobbying us, and he would say, my movie is going to appeal to the steak eaters because the King's Speech. Boy, all those costumes and all this, and he would give us but what it meant were the below the line guys out in the valley, out in Burbank and Glendale, who live there in houses with families and have traditional lives, but these wonderful jobs, editing films and doing the sound mixing and stuff. And they traditionally don't like gay stuff. They traditionally don't like, anything but just meat and potatoes, please, kind of stuff. But of course, in recent years, the Academy has expanded its base. It's welcomed in diverse people with different points of view, and the steak eaters is now a derisive term that's used among pundits to just say, but Dunkirk is a steak eaters movie. I mean, it's all the below the line stuff, beautifully rendered and beautifully done, and of course it can win Best Picture. And people who come back and say, it can't win Best Picture because it's out front too early, that's the worst thing that could happen to a movie. You don't want to be out front. Baloney. Movies like The Artist or go back to American Beauty. There are many, many examples of where movies that are out front early on stay there. And one of the most extraordinary things about Gold Derby, when we look back historically at our predictions, it's pretty amazing. We're about 50%. We usually get 2 out of 4 of the acting races right in August. And sometimes unbelievable, if you look back. And usually it's those supporting races, maybe Monique or J.K. Simmons broke out early on the indie scene and stay there, and then sweep the boards through the critics things. But other movies like The Artist and American Beauty and others, I'm blanking now, suggest that Dunkirk that could continue its ride. I agree with that. Now, what about the other Dunkirk movie, Darkest Hour? Traditional filmmaking, and I absolutely love it. It's one of my favorite movies of the year, and I think it's better than Dunkirk. Shame on me, but it's so poignant, so eloquent, so literate, and just moving. What do you think?
I hear interesting reactions. I think these two films are kind of going to be in a weird way polarizing to each other. Where people, it's rare that I've seen or heard from people who love Dunkirk and love Darkest Hour. It's always, they always love one more than the other significantly. Darkest Hour is certainly interesting. That's definitely going to be the King's Speech of the year. That's your traditionalist Oscar winner. It's got the flamboyant lead actor performance, transformative by Gary Oldman, who practically has Best Actor engraved with his name already.
I disagree with that, but go on.
Well, there are possibilities there, but it feels like he's the strongest frontrunner by far of any category this year.
I think that Timothy Chalamet, or whatever his name, if things just fell perfectly for him with the Critics Awards and the Globes and stuff, I think he could get in there. But that's a different thing. We have these other movies that are less likely to win, like Mudbound. I don't think can win, but the question is, does it get in as a nominee? Phantom Thread is a wonderful film. The performance, we're not allowed to talk about it in terms of a review yet, but we can certainly say this much. We've seen it, both of us, and we can say that Daniel Day-Lewis delivers again. But as you can see from the trailer and everything else, it's not a transformative performance. He's not becoming another character in terms of putting on a different act, looking different, the kind of big grandstanding theatrical acting they want. And then when you move further down the list here, Florida Project, it's kind of dipping now, but may rally again. And have we covered the movies that could actually win Best Picture here?
Well, one that I haven't mentioned, I don't know if it can win, but definitely certainly a strong contender to get into that top 7, 8, or 9 nominees is Get Out, which in the Academy, that could be a surprising sleeper.
Why is that? I loved it when it came out. I never thought it was an awards contender. And then the minute it was getting all this buzz, I'm going, come on, a horror movie and a comedy, 2 genres that never have any luck at the Oscars, right? With rare exceptions. And it's so good. It has a huge, critical consensus behind it. But I watched it again a 3rd time just a few days ago, and it's still fun, wonderful. But it doesn't strike me as an awards movie. But time and again, when you hear, when you see the Indie Spirit nominations and all these other things coming out, it's positioned that way, and this town is responding. Why do you think that is?
I think I think it's really kind of a refreshing success story in that it's it's one of those people think that films for a Black audience might be a kind of a niche market, and this is another film that disproves that again, like Hidden Figures did. That no, this is a mass appeal movie. It made hundreds of millions of dollars worldwide against like 25-cent budget. It's huge critical and box office success. It's on HBO because of its subject matter, and it's on HBO. It's entirely accessible, and they're campaigning for it. I've been to an event or two for Get Out already in New York, so they're definitely pushing it. I think there's it might run into a bit of a hurdle with the Golden Globes in the sense that there was some controversy when it was made official that a studio was going to push it as a comedy.
That was a made-up, bullshitty controversy, and no, and then by the way,
it makes more sense than The Martian did as in the comedy categories. As someone who cried during this movie, I do think that its satirical element it does make sense to me to classify it as a Black comedy, not just because of the ethnic makeup of the cast
and the theme of the thing. The Big Sick is one of those movies that has a lot of strong, passionate support, and it's registering early on in the awards group. I could see it making the Best Picture list, couldn't you? And I could see it even winning. I think I may even have it now winning the Golden Globe for comedy musical picture, but I'm thinking of switching back to Lady Bird. I kind of vacillate back and forth. But what do you think?
I think that one definitely has a shot. I have that in my number 10 spot for Best Picture, which they haven't had 10 nominees since they've instituted the sliding scale between 5 and 10. It's always been 8 or 9, but I do have it in my 10th spot. I think the fact that it's the true story of the two co-writers and Kumail Nanjiani, who co-wrote it with his wife, who went through this. He also stars in it. It's so personal in that way. And like Get Out, it was a movie that was made for a micro budget, but made in the summer, up against tentpole blockbuster movies. It carved out a good amount of money. At the box office, and it's getting a kind of a second round of promotion now that it's available to stream on Amazon Prime. So just like Get Out, which is on HBO, it's going to be very accessible to voters who haven't seen it yet or want to.
I've gotten about 400 copies of the DVD already. It's like, you can stop now, Amazon. I have enough copies of the DVD, which was the Crash strategy. There were when that thing beat Brokeback Mountain, part of the reason was because they smartly just blitzed the town with the DVDs, and you don't have to watermark those DVDs, that you can just mass produce them because it's past that kind of pirate window where they worry about those things. But if you have a new movie, if you're Phantom Thread or if you're The Post, you have to do the watermarking, and that's about $20 a DVD, and you got to ship it, and it's very, very expensive to push it around town. But these with the other DVDs like Big Sick and stuff, you can just blitz the town with them. They're on HBO, or that's not HBO, but it's on Amazon. And all of a sudden, it's very accessible. Now, we have to say, let's go back to Mudbound for a second, because that's a movie, too, that I've now had at least 200 copies of the DVD. It is Netflix, so it's smart of them to acknowledge, okay, we're a streaming service, but we have to use more traditional media to market it with these old fuddy-duddy Oscar voters. Very smart. It's hanging in there. It's doing very respectable at the Little Indie Awards, and has a real shot for nomination for Best Picture, doesn't it?
Oh yeah, I think it's still kind of an untested situation with Netflix. We saw Beasts of No Nation not go over very well, but that was a different case where I think really the best shot that movie had was Idris Elba, so it was really just one major snub, whereas Mudbound, I went to an event for that recently, with Oscar voters, and when I saw it at the New York Film Festival, I didn't know how it would go over with the mass public. I loved the film, or with the general industry, and everyone I've talked to has been really enthusiastic about the film. The critical response was huge. I do think this could be a breakthrough for Netflix. It has a potential acting contender in Mary J. Blige, who is making a big transformation on screen that could help carry with the actors branch. I think that this film was designed for like a SAG ensemble nomination, and we saw Beasts of No Nation from Netflix get in there. So the Screen Actors Guild Awards do love Netflix in a way that could help push it in the Oscar direction. So yeah, I've got it in my Best Picture predictions at the moment.
Are you sure Beast of No Nation was Netflix?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. I'm blanking out on that. I'm old enough to have remembered the whole Tanya Harding thing. And that matters, because not that my vote matters. I don't cast ballots at the Oscars, but that demo, if they're emotionally invested in your film personally, then that certainly helps. And of course, a lot of us geezers were there. And what I love about the film, I love a lot of things about it, but I love how it takes a moment to point out the fact that this was really at the start of that 24-hour news cycle when we're so used to it now, whether it's O.J. Simpson or whatever breaking news night and day, if it's a hurricane or something. But that was one of the first that did that. I think it'll do better in the acting categories, and I think it'll do better in some other races. But I wouldn't be shocked if it got into Best Picture.
Yeah, it does have that kind of little movie that could quality, where it could rise up, slowly bubble up into people's consciousness. I do have Margot Robbie getting to Best Actress. I have Allison Janney getting nominated for Supporting Actress. And certainly if the film has that much support from the actors branch, then certainly it could move up into a Best Picture nomination.
We have not yet seen All the Money in the World because they're reshooting it because of the Kevin Spacey thing. And there are wild cards in the race, like The Greatest Showman, which at first Fox said, "Oh, it's not an Oscar movie, you guys don't." And very often we get played that way by studios to kind of dampen expectations. But now I haven't seen it yet, but I'm hearing it's really, really good. Who knows? We're getting conflicting signals about that. But I think beyond that, I think we've done a good job of sizing up this race. Any final thoughts? Let's wrap up here and then do a separate chat on the acting races. What's your final thought?
I'm kind of hoping Dunkirk goes the distance, because I am kind of a Christopher Nolan fanboy, and this is films of the year. So
he can still win, Daniel. He can still win.
Yes, he can. He certainly can. But fingers. I thought that about Inception. I thought that about Interstellar. I thought that about Dark Knight. I've been burned before.
A few times, right? But I have. Let's end here with a quote that was whispered to me forcefully the other day by a member of HFPA. 3 billboards.